Hey guys, I am here with the Avkin AvTrach. This is a tracheostomy device, all silicone, so we can do moulage with this. So I'm gonna show you how to do a neglect trach patient. So first we're gonna just start with taking the neck ties off and removing the trach, just so we have a nice area to work with. We just want to be careful that nothing is going to go down this, because this is where all the electronics are. So we're just going to build around the tracheostomy area. So we want to prep our area with just doing an alcohol pad. Just make sure that it's well cleaned. From there, you can kind of just start building. So we're going to start with the liquid latex. So I just use Monster liquid latex. Again, I'd recommend the Ben Nye, but it is much more expensive if you're going to do that. But I'm going to start to just cause some irritation. Just see where it looks like the skin's kind of been moved a little bit. I'm just using a regular old sponge. Just cut this up and use it. Liquid latex are super rough with anything like that. So again, just being able to use any kind of sponge is helpful. And you're just gonna dab it to the point that you wanna see some texture there. So you're just gonna get this around that trach area. Bring it down a little bit just so that you are able to see it past the trach. I think that because of the trach collar and ties there, you just want to have it where it's a little more expanded than normal. So you're just going to keep building so you actually have some texture. All right, so that's about good. We're going to leave that. And then we're just gonna leave this for a little bit to dry. We don't wanna put anything on it while it's drying, or else it's just gonna all mix together. So you're gonna leave this for a little bit to let dry. All right, now we've come back and it looks like this. So it's a little drier now, so we can see that there's kind of that kind of ring around it. So we're gonna add in some makeup to just blend this out. So since this is the lightest skin tone, we're gonna use the lightest set of makeup. The good news with this is that because we're gonna add bruising and some other things on top of it, the shade doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to worry too much about that, but you do wanna get a base layer around the whole thing and then just kind of start to build from there. So the goal is that you just want this to look like irritated skin. That's really all it is. So you don't want it to be too dramatic or anything like that, but we just want it to look infected and a little angry. All right, so I'm gonna add a little more color here and just try to get the skin tone matched. It's okay too if it looks a little paler. Not gonna be perfect. All right, now we have this. I'm gonna add just a little more different shade here. So I am using the Monroe color wheel. It's called the Tattoo Cover. I don't know if it actually covers tattoos. Honestly, I don't think it's thick enough to do that, but that is what it's called. Ben Nye also does have a good skin tone wheel. It is just more expensive if you want to be able to do that, but it is good quality. This seems to work well, especially just for being able to do simple things like this, where again, we're not professional movie makeup artists here. So for our purposes, it works well, but if you did want to upgrade a little bit, that is also an option that probably has a little better coverage and a little better skin tone choices. So just anywhere I'm seeing it where it feels a little too light, I'm gonna go back in and I'm just gonna add a little bit more. You're just blending as you go, and then whenever you feel like you've got it. You just don't want to add too much where then it starts to look cakey, so you just want to stop yourself at some point. I'm just going to blend it a little bit with my fingers. All right, so we're going to call that good. Now what I'm going to go do is I'm going to take my bruise palette. So this is the Ben Nye bruise palette. I do swear by this palette. I've used several other bruise palettes. I do not like it as much as I like the Ben Nye one. So typically if I am gonna splurge on something, it's gonna be the bruise palette as well as the blood scab. This is or I think it's actually not called that. It's called thick blood. We used to call it scabby blood. But the thick blood is also really great. And again, that is the product I always use. I don't cheap out on those two options. So as I'm going in, for this particularly, since I'm not trying to create a bruise, I'm just trying to create irritation, really gonna focus on that red. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some of the darker red and then some of the lighter red, and I'm gonna go up towards the area where the trach is gonna be, and that's where I'm gonna make that look the most agitated. So taking that darker red and just kind of going around where the trach is, and then just kind of blending out as I go. It's very simple. I think a lot of times we get intimidated by being able to do this, but just as you go, just gonna take it, blend it, and it's all about the eye. You just don't want to overdo it and you don't want to underdo it. Making sure that you're getting in the crevices, because again, I think that's the hardest part when you have the liquid latex, is that you want to make sure you're getting all angles so that it's not just one side. So because of that, you just have to make sure you keep going back in again. All right, and then I'm going to add in a little bit of yellow just to add a little bit of diversity there of what we're looking at for the color and texture of it all. All right, so I feel like that's a good darker red. So now I'm going to just start taking it and spreading it out a little bit with the lighter red. Again, just to get that kind of mildly irritated. And remember, you got to go in a lot, just get those areas in a lot of different ways just to make sure that you're getting it from all angles. The best part about being able to use these wearable simulators is the fact that you can do this moulage and then you can leave it for an extended period of time. So rather than you having to redo the moulage over and over again, this really does last and it really doesn't stain. So that's the best part too, is you can just take an alcohol swab at the end of this and just really wipe it all off, even if it's been there for an extended period of time. So then you just take that red, work your way down. Now you've got a much more agitated part. So now I'm just gonna take that yellow, maybe a little green, and then I'm just gonna kind of go in and highlight different areas on top of the red. So I'm just blending, and then just continuing to add more. Just gives it a little more dimension, just so it doesn't look just red and irritated. Again, focusing on these higher parts here. I like to have that variation in color where again, it just looks a little grosser, a little nastier. Some additional options if you wanted would be to take some yogurt or something along those lines and just put it here on the edges, or as well here once you get that trach back in. You don't want any of the yogurt to go inside of your trach, you don't want that, but if you have it on the outside, it does help with making it kind of look pus, like there's a little bit of pus there. Avkin also does sell some simulated pus if you wanted to add that onto it. But it does help with just kind of looking a little more agitated if you want to kind of take it to that next level. So here, just done spreading it out, just bake it on there, and then you're kind of going to just use your fingers to blend. Use other tools if you want. I just prefer to use my fingers when I do it. So this is a very mild case. We're not going to go much more than that because we just don't want it too extreme. I think the worst part about moulage is when you start to overdo it and then it just looks way too extreme for what the situation would actually look like. Since we're trying not to do anything too crazy, I'm just going to add a little bit of blood here just to again be able to add a little bit more of that kind of like skin almost being rubbed and it being a little more irritated. I also just adds a lot of dimension. So I'm just taking this brush. This is a really cheap brush. Don't recommend using cheap brushes. Get the good stuff. If you do makeup, you understand, it just makes life easier, but we got a limited budget here. So cheap brushes work too, especially when you're just putting on a little blood. So we're taking this thick blood here and we're just kind of putting it around, tapping it around in different areas. We're not gonna cover the whole thing, but where the most agitated areas are gonna be, that's where we're gonna just kind of put a little bit of this blood here. Again, it really just adds a little more, like almost like a rug burn type of effect, which is what we're trying to do, where it just looks angry. That's what we want. All right, a little more down here. I think this is the hardest part for me, is just learning when to stop, because I just want to keep going. It's like, well, if this looks good, more will look better. That's not true. Don't trick yourself into thinking that. So just stop at some point. But now that I have both sides a little bit agitated and irritated, I'm going to stop there. Then if we just want to get a close-up of this. And now we're just going to put your trach back in. This is kind of, you're taking your masterpiece now and then hiding it a little bit, but it will look more natural once you put that back in. So we're going to just add that to it. And again, the cool part here is that when you have your simulations and your students are, changing out trach ties and things like that, they will see a little bit more of your work, which is great. But you can add that in. I also recommend adding a setting spray once you're done. You want to let it dry and then just add that setting spray. That's going to have it hold a whole lot longer, especially if you're using this for more than one sim. But there you have it. That's all it is. And then at the end of this, you can just take an alcohol swab. You can just wipe everything right off and it'll come right off really, really easily with no staining.